In a previous episode, we gave a list of the third-party games we'd want to see make it to the Switch 2, with the proviso of the new console having the chops to pull them off. Well, lo and behold, a couple of our out-of-pocket predictions made it onto the new console, Elden Ring and Cyberpunk 2077, the latter of which really goes to show the raw power the Switch 2 has under the hood. Alongside the Switch 2 editions, comprehensive upgrades for existing and upcoming original Switch titles, Nintendo are releasing free updates on a load of other Switch games to make use of the Switch 2's new power, and it seems Nintendo is keen for its partners to really take advantage too. Hogwarts Legacy and Fortnite are both getting new versions on the new console, the former especially being brought up to standard with its release on other consoles, with graphic fidelity and performance that was sorely missed on the original Switch. So with that in mind, let's take a look at some of the original Switch's biggest third-party hits we think could use a Switch 2 upgrade. Al from GamesRadar here, and welcome to Switch On, where we talk all things Nintendo Switch 2. Before we get into the games, let's have a quick recap of what we're dealing with here, what we know and what we don't know so far about the Switch 2's hardware capabilities. The Switch 2 can pump out up to 4K 60fps or 1440p 120fps, both with HDR10 in docked mode. As for handheld, its 7.9-inch LCD screen supports up to 1080p 120Hz and again with HDR10, though only certain games will be able to handle all three at once. As for internals, we know it boasts a custom Nvidia chip, but the actual numbers haven't been shared. Same goes for RAM and VRAM capacity and clock speed. Nintendo has a history of keeping the actual figures close to its chest, but considering the similar video output and performance to a Steam Deck, we're definitely looking at a significant step up from the original Switch. Right, let's talk games. And first up is one of the biggest no-brainers ever, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. One of the biggest "you can play this on the Switch" titles, The Witcher 3 is a great game to be squashed into the console. Huge and beautiful open worlds crammed with objectives to complete and monsters to defeat, with one of the most gripping stories to grace an RPG, one that both welcomes newcomers to the franchise and rewards those familiar with the rich lore. There's many a reason why this game often graces games to play before you die lists, and it's also a perfect game to play on the go. Boot it up for 30 minutes or 6 hours. The Witcher 3 will have you covered, despite its nerfed appearances. Now, what's worth noting is that 3 years after the Switch's release of The Witcher 3, CD Projekt released the Next Gen update, a re-release on PS5 and Xbox Series X and S, along with free updates for PC, PS4 and Xbox One. It's hard to think this game will be a decade old this year, as with improved graphic fidelity, textures, performance, and all new content, it stands toe-to-toe with even the most recent of RPGs. And with the 4th installment on the way, what better excuse to get the Switch port up to scratch with those all-important next-gen updates. The Bayonetta series has had an arduous journey. Developed by Platinum Games and helmed by visionary creator Hideki Kamiya, the mind behind Devil May Cry, the first installment in the series was published by Sega. Despite selling well, the title was still considered a bit of a disappointment, casting a question mark over the IP's future when Sega cancelled the sequel during development. However, Nintendo stepped in and Bayonetta 2 was reborn as a Wii U exclusive, before being ported to the Switch. With the combo-wielding witch now firmly established as Nintendo property, especially after appearing in Super Smash Bros., it was only natural the third game came to the Switch as another exclusive. Sadly, while the game was praised for its combat and replayability, Bayonetta 3 struggles from a technical standpoint, with inconsistent frame rate and texture issues. Also, the load times can be quite rough. However, the Switch 2 can have all the technical firepower to give Bayonetta the version it deserves, letting players tear through foes without being held back by limited hardware. What more could we ask for? Skyrim. Moving on. Another Switch port wonder. Doom and Doom Eternal on the Switch were honestly a marvel. They both ran pretty well and didn't look horrific, but it has to be said that full whack, they're both poster childs for high graphic, high FPS gaming. Charging through hellscapes at anything less than 1080p 60fps does these games a disservice. And while the obvious concessions made to the Switch ports didn't make them unplayable, it's arguable you're not getting the true Doom experience. So, as Doom the Dark Ages draws closer, an upgraded collection of all 3 modern-era Doom titles, running much closer to full steam on the Switch 2, would be nothing less than banging. Okay, this one is mainly just to satiate the memes. Of all the games that had such an infamous Switch version, Mortal Kombat 1 runs pretty well, but on launch had comically bad character models and textures. The comparison videos of the Switch version to its contemporaries have been burnt into my vision, and I still have nightmares. It was a valiant effort, and while the performance doesn't leave much to be desired, it's safe to say an update utilizing the Switch 2's power increase could save this title. Okay, we'll finish off with a couple of IPs, Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon. The Insane Trilogy, Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, and Spyro the Reignited Trilogy are all fantastic looking games, all artfully bringing their visuals into the modern era while honoring the vibe and aesthetic of their PS1 originals, but not so much on the Switch. Don't get me wrong, all things considered, they look good, but as Mascot platformers and kart racers running on a Nintendo console, they are being held to a certain standard. It's a somewhat unfair comparison, but it's an inevitable one. One hell of a handicap. For the most part, this standard was upheld on every other version. On PC, PS4, and Xbox One, these games are stunning, but all that gloss just couldn't be handled by the Switch. Now, the rumor mill is currently grinding, with Toys for Bob reportedly working on a new game being published by Xbox Game Studios, who now own Activision. A combination that brought us Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, and of course the Reignited Trilogy, which suggests one of these giants is getting another installment. If so, maybe it's worth bringing these ports to the Switch too, which would do them justice. And there we have it, some OG Switch games we think could really benefit from the Switch 2's increased horsepower. It'll be interesting to see, when the Switch 2's lifespan gets traction, if any of these original Switch third-party games will get performance updates just like Nintendo plans for some of its roster. But what about you? What Switch ports would you like to see get a boost with the new console? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you next time for Switch On.